Captain Lisa Howard stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force ship Vanguard. She looked through the main view screen at the vast space around them. Her ship was small compared to the others gathered for this historic meeting. The Vanguard was one of only 5 ships sent by humans to meet the Galactic Confederation. Lisa watched as massive alien ships moved into position around the meeting point. The crystalline ships of the Zorians glittered like diamonds in the starlight. Each one was over 3 kilometers long. The organic-looking vessels of the Mravani pulsed with strange lights, their hulls seeming to breathe. The energy ships of the Talasi glowed with power, their engines giving off blue light that could be seen from great distances. "Captain, we're being hailed by the Confederation Central Command," said Communications Officer Ben Kelly. His voice was steady, but Lisa could see the tension in his shoulders. "Put it on screen," Lisa ordered. She straightened her uniform and took a deep breath. The screen changed to show an alien with blue skin and 4 eyes. It was Admiral Zorlek of the Talasi, the current head of the Confederation Military Council. "Earth vessels, you will proceed to Docking Bay 7 for the diplomatic meeting. Your modest fleet may remain in the designated holding area." The high alien's voice contained a hint of amusement. "Acknowledged, Admiral. We're moving to the assigned coordinates now," Lisa replied, keeping her voice professional despite the alien's tone. When the communication ended, Lisa turned to her first officer, Commander Steve Mason. "They're not impressed with us, are they?" Steve shook his head. 5 ships against their hundreds. I guess we don't make much of a first impression." "That might work in our favor," Lisa said with a small smile. The 5 human ships moved carefully toward the massive space station that served as the meeting place for the Confederation. The station was a marvel of engineering, a spinning wheel of metal and light that housed representatives from 27 different alien species. On the diplomatic shuttle heading to the station, Admiral Frank Miller reviewed his notes one final time. As overall commander of the human delegation, he carried a heavy responsibility. This first official meeting between humanity and the galactic community would set the tone for all future relations. Beside him sat Dr. Susan Wright, Earth's chief negotiator. She was studying the profiles of the alien representatives they would meet. "Remember, Admiral, the Talasi value displays of strength above all else. The Zorians respect age and tradition. The Mravani only trust those who show emotion openly," Susan said. Frank nodded. "And all of them think we're newcomers who barely know how to leave our solar system." "Let them think that," Susan replied with a knowing look. The shuttle docked at the station and the human delegation stepped out into a massive hall filled with aliens of all shapes and sizes. Some floated in the air, others moved on many legs, and some seemed to flow across the floor like liquid. A tall, thin alien with gold skin approached them. "I am Trelvon, Station Coordinator. Welcome to Confederation Station Alpha. Please follow me to the council chamber." The humans followed Trelvon through wide corridors. Aliens stopped to stare at them as they passed. Some whispered to each other. Others made gestures that the humans' translator devices identified as signs of amusement or dismissal. The council chamber was a vast room with seats arranged in rising tiers around a central speaking platform. The human delegation was shown to seats at the very edge of the room, far from the central area where the major powers sat. Supreme Commander Vexlar of the Talasi stood to speak first. He was tall and imposing, with a metal exoskeleton that enhanced his natural strength. "We welcome our newest potential members to this gathering," he said, gesturing toward the humans. "Though I must question the wisdom of inviting a species that has barely left its gravity well. Their entire fleet consists of 5 small vessels that any one of our scout ships could easily outmatch." Laughter rippled through the chamber. Many alien representatives made sounds or gestures that their species used to show amusement. Frank Miller remained calm, his face showing no reaction to the insult. Beside him, Susan Wright simply smiled politely. Next to speak was High Admiral Krelvas of the Zorians. His crystalline body caught the light as he moved to the central platform. "The Zorian cluster has observed Earth for some time. While these humans have shown remarkable progress for such a young species, they are still children in galactic terms. Perhaps in a few centuries they might earn a proper place at this table. More laughter filled the room. The human delegation continued to sit quietly, allowing the aliens to underestimate them. When it was finally time for the human representative to speak, Frank Miller walked calmly to the central platform. His simple blue uniform looked plain, next to the elaborate dress of the alien representatives. "On behalf of Earth and all humans, I thank the Confederation for this invitation," Frank said. His voice was strong and clear. "We come in peace and with respect for the ancient civilizations gathered here." "Tell us, Admiral Miller," interrupted Vexlar, "why did your government send such a small fleet to this historic meeting? Do you not understand that in the Confederation, a species is judged first by its strength?" Frank smiled slightly. "We understand that different cultures have different values, Supreme Commander. Humans value efficiency and purpose. We brought exactly what we needed for a peaceful diplomatic mission." "And if it were not peaceful?" asked another alien representative. "Then 5 ships would be sufficient," Frank replied simply. This caused a new wave of laughter, even louder than before. As the diplomatic talks continued over the next few days, the human delegation was largely ignored. The major powers of the Confederation discussed trade routes, defense pacts, and technology exchanges, while the humans watched from their seats at the edge of the room. On the 3rd day, during a break in the formal talks, Captain Lisa Howard was approached by a Talasi officer in a side corridor. "Your ships are quite interesting," the alien said. "So small, yet your energy readings are unusual. Our sensors cannot fully analyze them." "We do our best with what we have," Lisa replied, with a polite smile. "It must be difficult coming from such a primitive world," the Talasi continued. "The Supreme Commander believes your species was admitted to these talks too early. Some of us agree." "Everyone is entitled to their opinion," Lisa said. "Indeed. Just know that in this galaxy, the strong survive and the weak." The alien let the sentence hang unfinished. Lisa looked directly at the Talasi. "On Earth we have a saying, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, but the size of the fight in the dog." The alien's translator struggled with the idiom, but the meaning was clear enough. The Talasi made a dismissive gesture and walked away. Back on the Vanguard, Lisa met with the other human ship captains via secure channel. Captain Nicole Baker of the Peregrine, Captain William Grant of the Defender, Captain Greg Dixon of the Horizon, and Captain Diane Kelly of the Intrepid. "They're still laughing at us," Greg said, his face serious on the screen. "Good," Lisa replied. "Admiral Miller's strategy is working perfectly. The less they think of us now, the more surprised they'll be if there's trouble." "And there will be trouble," Nicole added. "Our intelligence picked up unusual communication patterns from ships at the edge of the system. Something's happening." Lisa nodded. "We'll continue as planned. Keep all advanced systems in standby mode. As far as the Confederation knows, we're just 5 small, unimpressive ships from a backwater planet. Hidden in plain sight," William said with a small smile. "Exactly," Lisa replied. "They laugh at our tiny fleet now, but they don't understand one important thing about humans." "What's that?" asked Diane. Lisa's expression grew serious. "We've spent our entire history learning how to defeat larger, stronger opponents. 3 weeks passed since the first meeting between humans and the Galactic Confederation. The diplomatic talks had settled into a routine. Every day, representatives from the 27 alien species gathered in the Grand Council chamber. They discussed trade agreements, border disputes, and cultural exchanges. And every day, the human delegation sat quietly at the edge of the room, largely ignored by the more powerful species. Lieutenant Jack Peterson monitored the sensor array aboard the EDF Vanguard. His job was to watch for any unusual activity around the massive space station. Most days were quiet. Today was different. "Captain?" Jack called out, his eyes fixed on the screen in front of him. "I'm picking up strange energy readings at the edge of the system." Captain Lisa Howard moved quickly to his station. "Show me." Jack pointed to several blinking dots on his display. "These readings appeared 5 minutes ago. They don't match any known Confederation ship signatures." Lisa frowned. "Could it be a sensor malfunction?" I ran 3 separate diagnostic checks. The readings are real. Jack adjusted some settings on his console. Whatever these ships are, they're moving fast toward the station, and they're trying to hide their approach. Lisa didn't hesitate. Alert the other Earthships, then send a message to Admiral Miller on the station, code yellow. On the diplomatic station, Admiral Frank Miller received the alert during a minor trade discussion. He glanced at his datapad, then caught the eye of Dr. Susan Wright across the room. With a subtle nod, he signaled her to be ready. Frank approached. Trelvon, the station coordinator. Excuse me, but our ships have detected unidentified vessels approaching the station at high speed. The gold-skinned alien looked annoyed at the interruption. Your sensors must be malfunctioning. Our defense grid would have detected any approach. I respectfully suggest checking your long-range scanners, Frank insisted. Trelvon made a gesture that humans had learned meant irritation, but he spoke quietly into his communication device. A moment later, his 4 eyes widened. How did your ships detect this before our sensors? He asked. Frank didn't answer the question. Who are they? Trelvon's voice dropped to a whisper. Drazak Empire ships, at least 30 of them, heavily armed. The Drazak were not part of the Confederation. They were a warrior species known for their aggression and territorial expansion. Their sudden appearance could only mean trouble. You should alert the Confederation Security Council, Frank suggested. Trelvon hurried away. Within minutes, the calm atmosphere of the diplomatic meeting shattered. Alarms blared throughout the station. Emergency announcements in multiple languages instructed all representatives to return to their quarters. Frank gathered the human diplomats. Dr. Wright, you and your team need to get to the evacuation point. Our shuttle will meet you there. Susan nodded. What about you? I need to speak with the Security Council first. The Drazak aren't here by accident. In the Council's emergency chamber, representatives from the major powers argued loudly. Supreme Commander Vexillar of the Talasi tried to establish order. Our ships are moving to defensive positions, he announced. The Drazak will not dare attack once they see our combined fleet. High Admiral Krelvos of the Zorians disagreed. The Drazak would not come here without a plan. They must know they are outnumbered. Frank Miller stepped forward. May I offer a suggestion? Several alien representatives made dismissive gestures. Vexillar looked down at the human admiral. This is not the time for input from junior members. Before Frank could respond, a massive explosion shook the station. The lights flickered, then dimmed to emergency levels. A panicked voice came over the station's communication system. Multiple Drazak warships have decloaked near the station. They're attacking the docked vessels. The council chamber erupted. In chaos, representatives rushed to contact their ships. The massive view screens showed Confederation vessels scrambling to respond to the surprise attack. Back on the Vanguard, Lisa Howard issued rapid commands. All systems to combat readiness, reactor to full capacity but maintain emission dampening. Her crew moved with practiced efficiency. Unlike the chaotic response of the Confederation ships, the 5 human vessels shifted into perfect formation. Captain, Jack Peterson called out. Dr. Wright's diplomatic shuttle is leaving the station, but 2 Drazak destroyers are moving to intercept them. Lisa's expression hardened. They're targeting the diplomats. Clever strategy. Target the lead Drazak ship. Prepare for micro-jump. Commander Steve Mason looked concerned. Captain, if we reveal our jump capability now, we have no choice. Lisa cut him off. Those are our people on that shuttle. The Vanguard's engines glowed briefly, then the ship disappeared from its position. A split second later, it reappeared directly between the diplomatic shuttle and the approaching Drazak destroyers. The other 4 human ships moved quickly to support the Vanguard. Together they formed a protective screen around the diplomatic shuttle. From the station, aliens watched in disbelief. The tiny human ships had positioned themselves against warships many times their size. Those fools will be vaporized, muttered Krelvos, the Zorian High Admiral, as he watched on the council chamber view screen. Vexillar nodded in agreement. Brave but futile. Their ships are too small to withstand Drazak weapons. The first Drazak destroyer fired a massive energy beam at the Vanguard. Everyone watching expected the small human ship to explode. Instead, something extraordinary happened. The energy beam struck what appeared to be empty space in front of the Vanguard. The beam scattered into thousands of smaller streams of energy that harmlessly dispersed around the ship. "What just happened?" demanded Vexlar. A Talasi science officer checked the readings. "The human ship appears to have some kind of shield technology, but our sensors cannot identify its nature." On the bridge of the Vanguard, Lisa Howard remained calm. "Shield status?" "Quantum displacement field holding at 98%, reported Lieutenant Adam Ross at the defense station. "They hit us with everything they had, and it barely registered." "Return fire," Lisa ordered. "Conventional weapons only. Let's not show all our cards at once." The Vanguard fired what appeared to be standard energy weapons. The blasts struck the Drazak destroyer's shields with surprising force, causing them to flicker. The other human ships joined the attack, each firing, precisely at different points on the Drazak vessels. Their coordinated assault confused the enemy ships, which had expected easy targets. On board the EDF Defender, Captain William Grant spoke to his weapons specialist, Commander Alan Garcia. "The Drazak are adjusting their shield frequencies. They think we're using standard energy weapons," Alan smiled. "Should we show them their mistake?" "Not yet," William replied. "Standard protocols first. Admiral Miller's orders." The battle intensified as more Drazak ships moved toward the station. The Confederation vessels were finally organizing their defense, but their coordination was poor. Each species fought according to its own battle doctrine, with little communication between them. In contrast, the 5 human ships moved as one, protecting both the diplomatic shuttle and each other with precision that seemed impossible for such a small fleet. From the council chamber, Frank Miller watched the battle with a calm expression. Beside him, the alien representative stared in confusion at the tactical displays. "Your ships," Vexlar said to Frank, his voice less dismissive than before. "They are performing beyond their apparent capabilities." Frank nodded slightly. "We build our ships to be efficient." "This is more than efficiency," argued Krelvos. "Your vessels move in perfect coordination, and their defensive capabilities are unlike anything in our records." Frank allowed himself a small smile. Humans have a long history of being underestimated. The battle was far from over. The Drazak ships regrouped and changed tactics. Instead of targeting the human vessels directly, they began firing at the space station itself, aiming for critical systems. A large explosion rocked the diplomatic section of the station. Alarms blared even louder than before. "They've breached the station's hull in Section 12, reported a station officer. "That's near the main power core." Frank Miller's expression grew serious. "If they disable the station's power core, thousands will die." He activated his communication device. "All Earth vessels, this is Admiral Miller. The station is under direct attack. Section 12 near the power core. Protect the station at all costs. Authorization Sierra 9-3. On the bridge of the Vanguard, Lisa Howard understood what that code meant. "Sierra 9-3 confirmed," she replied. "We're going to Plan B." "Plan B is now in effect," Captain Lisa Howard announced to her crew on the Vanguard. "Remove all emission dampeners. Bring all systems to full capacity." Throughout the 5 human ships, hidden systems came online. Lights dimmed briefly as power redirected to previously concealed weapons and defense mechanisms. On the EDF Defender, Commander Alan Garcia sat at the weapons control station. His fingers moved quickly across the glowing panel. "Quantum displacement shield now at full power," he reported to Captain William Grant. "All restrictions removed." William nodded. "Target the Drazak ships attacking the station's power core. Use the QD cannon, minimal setting." Alan looked up in surprise. "Minimal setting? That's still enough to—" "Those are our orders," William said firmly. "Show them what we can do, but not everything we can do." The Defender moved into position. Its hull seemed to shimmer as hidden panels opened to reveal a weapon unlike anything the Confederation had seen before. On the Confederation station, Aliens gathered around view screens to watch the battle. They had expected the small human ships to be destroyed quickly. Instead, they saw something impossible. The defender fired what appeared to be a modest energy pulse toward a large Dryzak warship. The pulse moved slowly at first, then accelerated. When it struck the Dryzak vessel, the effect was dramatic. Space itself seemed to bend around the point of impact. The Dryzak ship's shields collapsed instantly. The hull crumpled inward as if crushed by an invisible hand. "What was that?" demanded Supreme Commander Vexlar, watching from the council chamber. A Talasi science officer checked the readings on his device. His four eyes widened in shock. "It appears to be some form of localized gravity weapon," he said. "The humans have somehow found a way to manipulate gravitational fields with extreme precision." "Impossible," said High Admiral Krelvos of the Zorians. "That technology is theoretical at best. We have studied it for centuries without success." Frank Miller stood quietly, watching the aliens' reactions with interest. Meanwhile, the EDF Peregrine demonstrated another surprising capability. Captain Nicole Baker gave a simple command: "Activate the ghost drive." The Peregrine's outline blurred. Then the ship seemed to fade from view, becoming transparent like a ghost. It moved through space toward a Dryzak command vessel, passing directly through debris and energy fields as if they weren't there. The Dryzak ships fired desperately at the Peregrine, but their weapons passed harmlessly through it. When the human ship reached its target, it suddenly solidified again, now inside the Dryzak vessel's shield perimeter. From this position, the Peregrine fired conventional weapons at point-blank range. The Dryzak command ship's engines failed, and it drifted powerless. On the EDF horizon, Captain Greg Dixon prepared another surprise. "Deploy microdrones." Small hatches opened along the horizon's hull. Thousands of tiny objects, each smaller than a human hand, flew out in perfect formation. These microdrones moved too fast for most sensors to track. They surrounded a group of 3 Dryzak destroyers, then attached themselves to the hulls. The Dryzak ships suddenly lost power. Their weapons went offline and their engines shut down. The mighty warships drifted helplessly in space. Back at the station, the alien representatives watched in stunned silence. The humans' tiny fleet was systematically disabling Dryzak warships many times their size. Their energy output exceeds their apparent reactor capabilities by orders of magnitude, said a Marivani engineer, checking the sensor readings. It should be impossible for vessels that small. In the council chamber, Frank Miller finally spoke. Not impossible, just efficient. Vexlar turned to the human admiral. You deceived us. Your ships are far more advanced than you led us to believe. We never claimed to be primitive, Frank replied calmly. You assumed that based on the size of our fleet. The battle continued around the station. The Dryzak forces, realizing they were outmatched, changed tactics again. Instead of attacking the human ships directly, they concentrated their fire on the station itself. A massive explosion shook the entire structure. Emergency alarms blared loudly. They've hit the main reactor, shouted a station officer. Containment field is failing. We have 30 minutes before catastrophic overload. Panic spread through the station. A reactor overload would destroy the entire structure and kill everyone aboard. On the Vanguard, Lisa Howard received the alert. Dr. Olivia Martinez, report to the bridge immediately. Dr. Martinez, the fleet's chief science officer, arrived quickly. Her dark eyes took in the situation at a glance. The station's reactor is using Talasi fusion technology, she said. Conventional containment methods won't work for this type of cascade failure. Lisa nodded. Can you help them? I can try. Olivia moved to a communication station. Patch me through to the station's engineering section. On the station, Chief Engineer Tolk, a Mravani, was working desperately to stabilize the reactor. His 6 arms moved rapidly across multiple control panels. Nothing was working. A communication channel opened. A human voice spoke clearly. This is Lieutenant Samantha Lee, engineering specialist from the EDF Intrepid. We can help with your reactor problem. Tolk made a gesture of frustration. We don't need help from newcomers. This is advanced Talasi technology. Trust me, Samantha insisted. Your conventional approach won't work with this type of cascade failure. The resonance pattern is accelerating too quickly. What do you know of resonance patterns? Tolk demanded. Enough to save your station, Samantha replied. I'm sending you a containment protocol now. Implement it immediately. Data flowed to Tolk's screen. He studied it quickly, his expression changing from dismissal to surprise, then to reluctant acceptance. This might work, he admitted. But I've never seen this approach before. That's because we developed it, Samantha explained. Please hurry. Tolk implemented the human protocol. The alarming sounds from the reactor began to fade. Readings that had been flashing red slowly turned yellow, then green. It's working, Tolk said, his voice filled with disbelief. The cascade is reversing. Around the station, the battle was turning decidedly in favor of the Confederation forces, led by the 5 human ships. The remaining Drazak vessels began to retreat. On the bridge of the Vanguard, Lisa Howard allowed herself a small smile. Inform Admiral Miller that the immediate threat has been contained. Commander Steve Mason studied the tactical display. Captain, the Confederation ships are regrouping. They're watching us very carefully now. I imagine they are, Lisa replied. We've certainly gotten their attention. In the council chamber, the alien representatives had stopped arguing. All eyes were on Admiral Frank Miller and the tactical displays showing the battle. Your 5 ships just defeated a Drazak attack, force that would have troubled our entire fleet, Vexilar said slowly. How is this possible? Frank smiled slightly. Humans have always had to be creative. Our history is full of smaller forces defeating larger ones through innovation and efficiency. And you hid these capabilities from us, accused Krelvos. We showed what was appropriate for a peaceful diplomatic mission, Frank corrected. When circumstances changed, so did our response. A communication alert sounded. Dr. Susan Wright appeared on screen, safe aboard one of the human ships. Admiral, the diplomatic team is secure, she reported. The Drazak forces are in full retreat. Thank you, Doctor, Frank replied. Please, join us in the council chamber as soon as possible. I believe the nature of our discussions with the Confederation is about to change significantly. As the alien representatives whispered among themselves, Frank stood quietly. The humans' strategy had worked perfectly. Their seemingly insignificant fleet had revealed just enough of its true capabilities to earn respect without showing everything they could do. In space around the station, the 5 Earth ships resumed their formation. To outside observers, they, once again, looked small and unimpressive. But no one in the Galactic Confederation would make the mistake of laughing at them again. The battle was not over. Though many Drazak ships had retreated, a core group of their most powerful warships continued fighting. Their attacks became more desperate and dangerous as they realized they were losing. Commander Paul Bennett coordinated the 5 human ships from his tactical station on the EDF Vanguard. His hands moved quickly over the control panel as he adjusted their formation. The Drazak are changing tactics again, Paul reported to Captain Lisa Howard. They're concentrating fire on the station's docking bays. If they destroy those, no one will be able to evacuate. Lisa nodded. They're trying to take hostages now. Typical Drazak strategy when they're losing. She opened a channel to the other human ships. All captains implement battle network protocol. Full integration. On each of the 5 human vessels, crew members connected their ship's systems to a shared network. Instead of fighting as individual vessels, they would now function as parts of a single unified fighting force. The aliens watched in amazement as the human ships began moving with impossible coordination. They seemed to think as one, reacting to threats before they fully developed. How are they doing that? Asked a Zorian officer on the station. Their movements are too perfectly synchronized for normal communication. A Talasi engineer studied the sensor readings. They appear to be using some kind of neural link technology. Their ships are sharing information and responding as a single entity. In the council chamber, Frank Miller met with the Confederation leadership. Dr. Susan Wright had joined him, along with the other human diplomats who had been evacuated from the station. The Drazak won't give up easily, Frank explained to the alien representatives. Their culture doesn't allow for retreat without severe consequences. Supreme Commander Vexillar of the Talasi had lost much of his earlier arrogance. Our combined fleets are moving to support your vessels, Admiral Miller, though I admit they may not be needed. All help is welcome, Frank replied diplomatically. The Drazak still outnumber us despite our technological advantages. Outside, the battle shifted again. A massive Drazak dreadnought, nearly 10 kilometers long, moved toward the station. Its size dwarfed even the largest Confederation ships. That's their flagship, the Deathbringer, said Krelvos of the Zorians. It has never been defeated in battle. The enormous Drazak vessel fired a powerful beam weapon at the station. The energy blast was strong enough to penetrate the station's shields, damaging several levels. On the Vanguard, Lisa made a quick decision. Target the Deathbringer. All ships, implement Maneuver Omega. The 5 human ships moved into a star formation. Energy began to flow visibly between them, connecting them with streams of blue-white light. What are they doing now? Vexillar asked, watching from the council chamber viewport. No one had an answer. The Confederation had never seen anything like this before. The human ships began to rotate faster and faster, their energy connections growing brighter. Then, as one, they released a massive energy pulse toward the Drazak flagship. The pulse struck the Deathbringer with tremendous force. Its powerful shields flickered and failed. Parts of its hull began to break apart. On the Defender, Commander Alan Garcia monitored the weapon systems. QD cannon effect at 70%, Captain. The Drazak flagship is severely damaged but still operational. Captain William Grant nodded. Prepare for a second strike if needed. But before the human ships could attack again, something unexpected happened. The remaining Drazak vessels moved to protect their flagship. They positioned themselves between the Deathbringer and the human fleet. They're sacrificing themselves, Lisa observed. That's unusual for the Drazak. Lieutenant Jack Peterson checked his sensors. Captain, I'm detecting unusual energy readings from those ships. They're overloading their reactors. Lisa understood immediately. They're going to self-destruct near the station. Everyone, brace for impact. She opened a channel to all ships in the area. All vessels, clear the area near the station. Drazak suicide attack imminent. Most of the Confederation ships moved away quickly, but they were too far from the station to help, and the Drazak ships were too close for a conventional defense. On T, the intrepid Captain Diane Kelly made a quick calculation. We won't be able to stop all of them with conventional weapons. She turned to her first officer. Activate the phase shield, extended range. Captain, the phase shield hasn't been tested at that range, her officer warned. No choice, Diane Kreis replied firmly. Do it now. The Intrepid moved between the station and the approaching Drazak ships. A soft white glow spread from the human vessel, expanding outward to form a dome of energy that encompassed the entire station. Moments later, the Drazak ships exploded. The combined force of their reactors created a massive shockwave that rushed toward the station. The aliens watched in horror, certain that nothing could stop such a powerful blast. But when the shockwave hit the white energy dome, something remarkable happened. Instead of passing through, the destructive energy was absorbed into the dome itself. The white glow turned bright blue, then purple, as it processed the enormous energy input. It's absorbing the explosion, whispered a Talasi scientist in awe, converting the energy rather than blocking it. When the last of the shockwave had been absorbed, the energy dome contracted back to the Intrepid. The ship glowed brightly for several seconds, then returned to normal. In the council chamber, the alien representatives stood in stunned silence. The Confederation's most advanced ships couldn't have protected the station from that attack. Your vessel just absorbed enough energy to power a small planet, Vexillar said to Frank Miller. How is that possible? Phase shield technology, Frank explained simply. It converts energy rather than trying to block it. But such technology is theoretical. argued a Miravani scientist. The power requirements alone would be impossible for a ship that size. Frank smiled slightly. Not impossible. Just different from your approach. The battle was finally ending. The damaged Drazak flagship limped away, followed by the few surviving enemy vessels. The immediate danger had passed. Throughout the Confederation fleet, ships began standing down from combat status. Damage reports flowed in from all sectors. Many alien vessels had been destroyed or badly damaged. In contrast, the 5 human ships appeared almost untouched. They resumed their position near the station, once again looking small and unimpressive to casual observers. On the Vanguard, Lisa, Howard received a message from Admiral Miller. Well done, Captain. The Confederation leadership is requesting a full briefing on our technology and tactics. How much should we share? Lisa asked. Enough to build trust, not enough to compromise security, Frank replied. The standard protocol for first contact scenarios. Lisa smiled. They're not laughing anymore, are they? No, Frank agreed. But respect born of fear isn't our goal. We need to show them that humans can be valuable allies, not just powerful ones. As repair teams worked throughout the station, the 5 human ships maintained their vigilant watch. The Confederation fleet moved around them cautiously, keeping a respectful distance. Major Ryan Cooper, tactical officer on the horizon, summed it up best. Funny how quickly attitudes change when they see what we can really do. Captain Greg Dixon nodded. That's why we held back during the diplomatic meetings. First impressions matter, but second impressions can be more powerful. The 5 small ships had proven something important today. In the vastness of space, appearances could be deceiving, and humans had perfected the art of being underestimated. 3 days after the battle, the Confederation station had been mostly repaired. The damaged sections were sealed off, and the main power systems were stable again. Throughout the station, aliens from many different species worked together with a new sense of unity. Nothing brought people together like a shared enemy. Admiral Frank Miller stood at the center of the council chamber. The room was packed with representatives from all 27 species of the Galactic Confederation. Unlike the first meeting, when the humans had been seated at the far edge of the room, Frank now stood at the place of honor. On behalf of Earth and all humans, I thank the Confederation for standing with us against the Drazak attack, Frank began. Working together, we were able to defend this station and protect the diplomatic mission. Supreme Commander Vexler of the Talasi stepped forward. The tall alien no longer looked down at Frank with disdain. There was respect in his 4 eyes now. It is we who should thank you, Admiral Miller, Vexler said. Without your ships, this station would have been destroyed. Many lives were saved by human technology and courage. Murmurs of agreement spread through the chamber. Many of the aliens made gestures of respect toward the human delegation. High Admiral Krelvos of the Zorians spoke next. We have all learned an important lesson. Size does not always equal strength. Numbers do not always bring victory. Frank nodded. That is a lesson humans learned long ago. Our history is filled with smaller forces defeating larger ones through innovation, strategy, and efficiency. Tell us, Admiral, asked a Miravani representative. Why did Earth send only 5 ships to this historic meeting? Was it to hide your true capabilities from us? Frank smiled slightly. Not to hide them exactly. We wanted to be judged by who we are, not by the size of our fleet. Earth has limited resources compared to many of your worlds. We learned to do more with less. And what we saw in battle? Pressed Vexlar. The gravity weapons, the phase shields, the neural linking technology. Is that the full extent of human capabilities? Dr. Susan Wright stepped forward to stand beside Frank. What you saw was what we brought to a diplomatic conference, she said carefully. Our ships carried appropriate systems for self-defense and protecting allies. The aliens understood the subtle message. The humans had revealed only some of their technology, not all of it. Captain Lisa Howard and the other ship captains joined the diplomatic team in the council chamber. They wore their simple blue uniforms, looking modest compared to the elaborate dress of the alien officers. I am curious, said a Talasi engineer, approaching Lisa. Your ships appear to use energy in ways our scientists thought impossible. How did humans develop such technology when you've only been in space for such a short time? Lisa exchanged a glance with Frank before answering. We had to be creative. Humans faced many challenges on Earth that forced us to think differently about energy, space, and matter. Would Earth be willing to share some of this technology with the Confederation? Asked Vexlar. Frank nodded. That's why we came here, to establish peaceful relations and begin cultural and technological exchanges. But such exchanges must go both ways. The aliens discussed among themselves. After a few minutes, Vexlar spoke for the group. The Galactic Confederation formally invites Earth to join as a full member, with all rights and responsibilities. Your proven capabilities have earned you a place at the center table, not the edge. Frank smiled. Earth accepts your invitation, with gratitude and hope for a peaceful future together. The formal ceremony to welcome Earth into the Confederation took place the next day. The massive council chamber was decorated with symbols from all member species, including the blue and green Earth flag. After the ceremony, a reception was held in one of the station's large gathering halls. Aliens and humans mingled, sharing food, drink, and stories. The atmosphere was far different from the first tense meetings. Lisa Howard found herself speaking with Admiral Krell Voss of the Zorians. The crystalline alien's body caught the light as he turned toward her. We have existed in this galaxy for 30 millennia, Krell Voss said. Yet in many ways your species sees things we have become blind to. Perhaps that is your true strength. Lisa smiled diplomatically. Every species has its gifts. We look forward to learning from you as well. I am most curious about one thing, continued Krell Voss. During the battle, your 5 ships moved with perfect coordination, as if guided by a single mind. How is this possible? We call it the battle network, Lisa explained. It allows our ships to share information and act as a single unit rather than 5 separate vessels. Fascinating, said Krell Voss. The Zorians tried to develop similar technology centuries ago, but abandoned it as impractical. Perhaps we gave up too soon. Across the room, Dr. Olivia Martinez, the fleet's chief science officer, was speaking with a group of alien scientists. They bombarded her with questions about human technology. Your phase shield that absorbed the Drazak explosion, said a Talasi scientist. It violates several laws of physics as we understand them. Olivia smiled. Or perhaps it suggests that your understanding of those laws is incomplete. At another table, Lieutenant Samantha Lee was explaining to Chief Engineer Tolk how the humans had stabilized the station's reactor. You reversed the cascade failure by introducing a counter-resonance pattern, Tolk said. My people would never have considered that approach. Sometimes you need fresh eyes on an old problem, Samantha replied. Throughout the reception, Frank Miller observed these interactions with satisfaction. The humans were being accepted as equals now, not dismissed as newcomers. Their strategy had worked perfectly. Lieutenant Eric Davidson approached Frank quietly. The young officer had designed the initial, humble beginning strategy that had guided their first contact approach. It worked even better than we expected, sir, Eric said softly. Frank nodded. Sometimes appearing harmless is the best way to demonstrate strength. The Confederation now respects us without fearing us too much. And the Drazak? Eric asked. They'll be back eventually, Frank replied. But next time we'll have allies. The reception continued. Captain Lisa Howard stepped away for a moment. She moved to a viewport where she could see the 5 human ships floating in space near the station. From this distance, they still looked small compared to the massive alien vessels around them. Commander Steve Mason joined her at the viewport. Quite a change from when we first arrived, isn't it, Captain? Lisa nodded. They laughed at our tiny fleet then. They're not laughing now, Steve observed. No, Lisa agreed. But that was never our goal. We didn't come here to intimidate or dominate. We came to join something larger than ourselves. She turned away from the viewport to look at the gathered aliens and humans talking and learning from each other. This is our real victory, Lisa said. Not the battle. But what comes after? As the Earth ships prepared to return home with news of their successful first contact, Admiral Miller sent a coded message back to Earth High Command. Operation Humble beginning successful. Phase 2 authorized. They no longer laugh. The 5 ships that had been mocked as tiny and insignificant would return to Earth as honored representatives of a new galactic power. And the message they carried was simple. In the vast wilderness of space, appearances could be deceiving, especially when dealing with humans. Captain John Miller stood on the bridge of the Earth Alliance vessel Horizon, watching the stars through the massive viewscreen. His dark blue uniform was perfectly pressed, his posture straight and alert. After 20 years in space, he still felt a thrill every time they approached a new star system. "Captain, we're receiving the welcome transmission from the Galactic Confederation Station," said Communications Officer Diane Foster. Her fingers moved quickly across her console. "They're providing docking instructions now." Miller nodded. "Very good. Helm, follow their approach vector. Lieutenant Wright, prepare the diplomatic team." Lieutenant Susan Wright stood from her tactical station. She was tall, with short blonde hair and eyes that missed nothing. "Yes, sir. The team is already assembled in the shuttle bay." This mission was historic. Humanity's first official meeting with the Galactic Confederation after decades of distant observation. Earth had developed faster than light travel only 30 years ago, and in that time, they had explored nearby systems and established a few colonies, but they were newcomers to a galactic community that had existed for thousands of years. Miller felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. The future of human expansion depended on this meeting going well. "I'll join the diplomatic team," Miller said. "Commander Rivera, you have the bridge." Commander Rivera, a steady presence with salt and pepper hair, nodded solemnly. "Good luck, Captain." Miller took the elevator down to the shuttle bay where 12 officers in formal dress uniforms waited. Among them was Dr. Kevin Phillips, Earth's leading xenobiologist and the official head of the diplomatic mission. "Nervous, Captain?" Phillips asked with a small smile. "Cautiously optimistic," Miller replied. "Something about this all feels rushed." Phillips shrugged. "They've been watching us for decades. Perhaps they finally decided we're worth talking to." The team boarded the shuttle, and Miller took a seat near the front. As they departed the Horizon, he got his first good look at the Confederation station. It was enormous, at least 5 times the size of Earth's largest space station. Its design resembled a silver snowflake with dozens of docking arms extending from a central hub. "Impressive," Wright whispered from beside him. "Very," Miller agreed. "But notice the weapons emplacements? There are hundreds of them." Wright's eyes narrowed as she scanned the station more carefully. Defensive capability far beyond what they described in their briefing materials. "Keep your eyes open," Miller said quietly. "Something doesn't feel right." The shuttle docked smoothly, and after a brief pressurization sequence, they were greeted by a delegation of aliens. The leader was a Zalaxian, a tall, slender being with pale blue skin, 4 arms, and large dark eyes. He wore flowing robes of silver and blue. "Welcome, humans of Earth," the Zalaxian said through a translation device. "I am Ambassador Zextral. We are honored by your presence." Miller noticed something odd in the ambassador's demeanor, a mixture of deference and what seemed almost like fear. That made no sense. Earth's technology was far behind the Confederation's. They should be viewed as primitive newcomers, not equals to be feared. The human delegation was led through gleaming corridors to a large meeting chamber. Representatives from at least 20 different species sat around a massive circular table. Miller noticed that several seats remained empty. "Were others expected?" Dr. Phillips asked. Ambassador Zextral's 4 hands made a complicated gesture. Some delegations expressed concerns about meeting humans directly. They will observe remotely. Miller and Wright exchanged glances. Why would advanced civilizations fear meeting humans? The formal reception began with speeches and introductions. Dr. Phillips presented information about Earth and human culture, while representatives from various alien species explained their roles in the Confederation. Miller was only half listening, his attention drawn to the growing tension in the room. Several of the aliens kept staring at the humans with expressions that his instincts read as fear. He was about to whisper his concerns to Wright when alarms blared throughout the station. "Security breach in Sectors 7 through 9, announced a computerized voice in multiple languages. "Hostile boarding in progress." Ambassador Zexitral's blue skin paled to nearly white. "Draconites," he whispered. "The radical faction has found us." The chamber doors burst open and 7 reptilian warriors charged in. They were massive, covered in scales and armor, with powerful tails and clawed hands that held energy weapons. "Death to the peace talkers," the lead Draconite roared. "And death to the sleeping gods." The aliens around the table scattered in panic. The Draconites raised their weapons, targeting the defenseless diplomats. Without thinking, Miller launched himself across the room. He moved with a speed that surprised even him, tackling one of the Draconite warriors to the ground. The alien was twice his size and weight, yet Miller held him down with unexpected strength. Across the room, Lieutenant Wright had drawn her standard-issue sidearm. With impossible precision, she fired 3 shots in rapid succession, hitting the weapons of 3 different Draconites and causing them to explode. The remaining security forces, a mixture of robotic guards and armed representatives, managed to subdue the rest of the attackers. When the brief but violent skirmish ended, Miller stood up, breathing hard. The room had fallen completely silent. Every alien was staring at the humans with undisguised shock and fear. Ambassador Zexitral approached Miller slowly, his 4 arms held out in what seemed to be a gesture of supplication. "The legends were true," he whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "The war gods have awakened." Miller looked at his hands, confused. "What are you talking about?" "We just reacted to the threat." The ambassador trembled. "No human should be able to move that fast or with such strength. Your lieutenant's accuracy defies probability." Dr. Phillips stepped forward. "Ambassador, I assure you we're just normal humans who received standard military training." "No," said another alien representative, a small being with insect-like features. "We have studied your species for decades. What you just displayed exceeds your known physical limitations by at least 3 times. Before Miller could respond, a communication officer rushed into the room. "Ambassador, we're receiving urgent messages from across the Confederation. Word of the incident has already spread." "How is that possible?" Miller asked. "It just happened." "Subspace. Communications," Wright said quietly. "Remember the briefing? Information travels almost instantaneously across their network." The communications officer looked terrified. 7 species have already withdrawn their diplomatic missions to Earth. 12 others are requesting immediate protection agreements. Miller turned to Ambassador Zexitral. "I demand an explanation. Why are we being called war gods? Why is everyone suddenly afraid of us?" The ambassador's large eyes blinked slowly. "Captain Miller, there is much about your own species that you do not know. History that was hidden from you." "What history?" Dr. Phillips demanded. "It is not my place to tell you," Zextral said. "But now that you have revealed yourselves, others will come seeking either your protection or your destruction." He bowed deeply. The balance of power in the galaxy has just shifted dramatically. As Miller and his crew returned to their shuttle, they could feel the stares of hundreds of aliens watching them from every corridor and chamber. Word had spread through the entire station. "Captain," Wright said quietly, "what just happened in there?" Miller shook his head, his mind racing with questions. "I don't know, Lieutenant, but I think we just broke something very important without even knowing what it was." As the shuttle departed for the horizon, Miller looked back at the massive station. He couldn't shake the feeling that humanity had just stepped onto a much larger stage than they had ever imagined, and that they were somehow expected to know their lines in a play they'd never rehearsed. Dr. Alice Bennett brushed red dust from her knees as she stood up in the Martian cave. The beam from her headlamp cut through the darkness, illuminating the strange markings on the wall. She had been working in this cave system for 3 weeks, but only today had her team broken through to this hidden chamber. Sam, come look at this, she called to her research assistant. Sam Wilson hurried over, his eyes widening as the light revealed the cave wall. Are those hieroglyphs? Alice nodded, her heart racing with excitement. The wall was covered with symbols and images that clearly showed intelligent design. Most striking were the figures of bipedal beings, humans, standing tall with raised arms. From their hands came jagged lines representing fire or lightning. Around them lay the forms of monstrous creatures. This changes everything, Alice whispered. These markings are deep under the Martian surface. They must be thousands of years old. But that's impossible, Sam said. Humans weren't on Mars thousands of years ago. Alice carefully photographed every inch of the wall. Exactly. So either these weren't made by humans, or our history books are wrong, Sam finished. While Alice made her discovery on Mars, Admiral Frank Rodriguez sat in a windowless room at Earth Alliance headquarters in Geneva. The gray-haired officer listened intently as Intelligence Officer Maya Lee presented her findings. These intercepted communications began flowing immediately. After the incident at the Confederation station, Maya explained, pointing to the screen. We've translated about 60% so far. And? Rodriguez asked. They're all discussing the same thing, sir. They're calling humans the Terran war deities and talking about our return. Maya looked uncomfortable. Most disturbing are the references to something called the First Great Purge. Rodriguez frowned. The First Great Purge? What does that mean? We don't know, sir. There's no event in human history that matches these descriptions. According to these messages, humans once controlled vast regions of space and were feared as unstoppable warriors. Maya paused. Some of these communications date the first purge to approximately 25,000 Earth years ago. That's ridiculous, Rodriguez said. Human civilization as we know it was barely beginning 10,000 years ago. Yes, sir. But the Confederation species seem convinced of this history. Rodriguez rubbed his temples. What about the reports of unusual abilities? Have we confirmed what happened with Captain Miller and Lieutenant Wright? Maya nodded. We've reviewed the station's security footage. Both Miller and Wright displayed physical capabilities well beyond normal human limits. And sir, they're not the only ones. She showed him new reports coming in from Earth Alliance outposts. A Marine lifting a fallen beam that should have required heavy machinery. A pilot surviving a crash that should have been fatal. A doctor working for 72 hours straight without rest. It's like something is waking up inside us, Maya said quietly. Millions of kilometers away on the mining colony of Ceres, engineer Olivia Parker was trying to fix a damaged power conduit. The cramped maintenance shaft made the work difficult, and she cursed as her hand slipped, cutting her palm on a sharp edge of metal. Damn it, she muttered, watching blood drip from her hand. The droplets fell onto the strange metal object her team had discovered embedded in the asteroid last week. They had assumed it was a natural formation, but when her blood touched its surface, the object began to glow. Olivia jumped back as the device projected a three-dimensional image in the air. The hologram showed armored figures that were clearly human in form. They moved with impossible speed and strength, decimating entire fleets of ships that Olivia didn't recognize. At the bottom of the projection was a date marker in an alien script. The translation software in Olivia's tablet processed it. Campaign against the Void Eaters, year 93,427. Approximate 25,000 Earth Standard years ago. Olivia stared in disbelief. The hologram showed humans, or beings that looked exactly like humans, fighting. An interstellar war thousands of years before humans had even developed agriculture on Earth. Back on Earth, Admiral Rodriguez had made his decision. Assemble a team, he told Maya. I want Captain Miller, Dr. Bennett from the Mars expedition, and our best scientists. There's an abandoned alien outpost near Proxima Centauri that our scouts found last year. If there are answers about our past, we might find them there. 3. Days later, the Earth Alliance vessel Intrepid departed Earth orbit with Captain Miller in command. Dr. Bennett had been rushed back from Mars with her findings, and a team of specialists filled the key positions on the ship. The coordinates are set for the Proxima Centauri system, reported navigator Paul Chen. Estimated travel time is 6 days at maximum FTL. Miller nodded from the captain's chair. He had barely slept since the incident at the Confederation station. Strange dreams plagued him whenever he closed his eyes. Dreams of battles among the stars, of power flowing through his body. "Dr. Bennett," he said, turning to the archaeologist who stood nearby. "Tell me more about these cave markings you found." Alice pulled up images on the main screen. The hieroglyphs show human-like figures using powers against monstrous enemies. Carbon dating puts them at over 15,000 years old. Lieutenant Wright, who had insisted on joining the mission, studied the images. Those creatures look like the Void Eaters mentioned in the hologram that Engineer Parker found on Ceres. "There's something else," Alice added. "I found this repeated symbol that our translation AI identifies as meaning guardians or protectors. It's always associated with the human figures." Miller frowned. "Not conquerors, but protectors?" "That's what it suggests," Alice confirmed. "But protectors of what? And why don't we remember any of this?" The ship's AI interrupted them. "Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth. Admiral Rodriguez reports that 17 more incidents of enhanced human abilities have been recorded in the past 24 hours. The Galactic Confederation has issued a formal request for humans to remain within our current territory until, quote, the awakening situation can be properly assessed." A chill ran down Miller's spine. "They're afraid of us," he said quietly. "And the worst part is I'm starting to think they might be right to be." The Intrepid continued its journey toward Proxima Centauri, carrying a crew searching for the truth about their own species. None of them could have imagined what they would find there. Evidence that humanity wasn't uplifted by aliens, we were exiled by them. Or perhaps even more disturbing, we had exiled ourselves. The Earth Alliance vessel, Intrepid, emerged from faster-than-light travel near Proxima Centauri, with a slight shudder. On the bridge, Captain Miller watched as the abandoned alien outpost came into view on the main screen. It was built into the side of a small moon, its dark metal surface reflecting little of the distant sun's light. "Scan for life signs or active power signatures," Miller ordered. Lieutenant Wright ran the scans from her tactical station. "No life signs detected, Captain. Minimal power readings, possibly emergency systems only." "Prepare a landing party," Miller said. "Dr. Bennett, Dr. Davis, Security Officer Martinez, and myself, Lieutenant Wright, you have the bridge." Dr. Patricia Davis, the team's geneticist, checked her equipment one last time before boarding the shuttle. She was a serious woman with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her specialty was evolutionary biology and genetic analysis, and Admiral Rodriguez had specifically requested her for this mission. Security Officer Greg Martinez loaded his weapon and secured extra power cells to his belt. The young officer had joined Earth Space Forces only 2 years ago, but his combat scores were off the charts. The shuttle departed the Intrepid and approached the alien structure. Up close, they could see that the outpost was much older than they had initially thought. Parts of it were damaged with scorch marks suggesting some ancient battle. "That entrance looks accessible," Dr. Bennett pointed to a large doorway. "The architecture matches some elements I saw in the Mars cave glyphs." The shuttle landed on a flat platform near the entrance. After confirming their environment suits were sealed properly, the team exited into the thin atmosphere of the moon. "Gravity is about 60% of Earth standard," Martinez noted as they moved toward the entrance. "Makes movement easier, but watch your steps." The massive doors were partially open, allowing them entry into a dark corridor. Their suit lights illuminated the way as they moved deeper into the facility. The walls were covered with the same type of symbols Dr. Bennett had found on Mars. "I'm recording everything," she said excitedly. "These are definitely the same language patterns." They reached a large central chamber where emergency lighting still functioned, casting a dim blue glow over the room. The space was filled with equipment covered in dust, and along one wall stood dozens of cylindrical containers. Dr. Davis approached one of the containers and wiped away the dust from its surface. She gasped. "These are stasis chambers for biological samples," she said. And this one contains human DNA. Miller joined her. Are you certain? The labeling is clear and my scanner confirms it, Davis replied. Captain, these samples are ancient. The dating system suggests they're at least 50,000 years old. That's impossible, Miller said. Humans as we know them weren't even fully evolved 50,000 years ago. Davis continued her analysis, moving from container to container. These aren't just random samples. They're organized chronologically, showing what appears to be deliberate genetic modification over thousands of years. Dr. Bennett called from across the room. I found a data terminal that still has power, if we can interface with it. Martinez helped her connect their translation device to the alien terminal. After several minutes of work, the screen flickered to life, displaying text and diagrams. It's a research log, Bennett translated slowly. They were studying human genetics, tracking changes to something called the warrior gene complex. Davis looked up sharply. The warrior gene? That's a real genetic marker in humans. It's associated with aggression and combat readiness. Bennett continued reading. According to this, humans once had a much more advanced version of this gene complex. It allowed for enhanced strength, speed, accelerated healing, and something translated as energy manipulation. Like the powers shown in the Mars glyphs, Miller said. Yes, Bennett nodded. But this log says the genes were deliberately suppressed through a program of selective modification. They engineered humans to forget their true abilities. While they were examining the terminal, Martinez wandered toward another section of the facility. He noticed a door that was slightly ajar and pushed it open. Inside was what looked like a weapons testing range. Curious, he stepped in for a closer look. The floor was unstable, and a section collapsed under his weight. Martinez fell, striking, his head against a metal beam. His helmet cracked and blood trickled down his forehead. Martinez, Miller shouted, rushing to the security officer's side. Davis, get over here. Dr. Davis hurried to assess Martinez's injury. The cut isn't deep, but we need to seal his helmet. As they worked to help him, something strange began to happen. Martinez's breathing became rapid, his heart rate spiked, and his skin grew hot to the touch. What's happening to him? Miller asked, concerned. Davis scanned Martinez with her medical device. His adrenaline levels are off the charts. It's triggering some kind of reaction in his cellular structure. Before, their eyes that cut on Martinez's forehead began to seal itself. His muscles tensed and seemed to grow more defined. When he opened his eyes, they glowed with an inner light. With one fluid motion, Martinez stood up, lifting a piece of fallen debris that weighed at least 300 pounds, and tossing it aside as if it were nothing. Martinez? Miller said, cautiously. Are you all right? The security officer looked at his hands in wonder. I feel different, stronger, like I've been sleeping my whole life and just woke up. The glow in his eyes faded after a few minutes, and though he remained stronger than before, the extreme enhancement seemed to diminish. The adrenaline spike must have temporarily deactivated the genetic suppressions, Dr. Davis theorized. The injury and danger triggered something dormant in his DNA. Martinez looked at her. You mean this is what humans are really capable of? I need to get blood samples back to my lab, Davis said. But based on what we're seeing here, yes, humans were engineered to forget their true nature. Back on Earth, similar awakenings had begun occurring worldwide. A firefighter lifted a collapsed beam to save a trapped child. A police officer moved with impossible speed to pull pedestrians from the path of a runaway vehicle. A doctor worked for 3 days straight without rest to save victims of a natural disaster. Each incident was triggered by stress, danger, or injury, situations where adrenaline flooded the body. In his office at Earth Alliance headquarters, Admiral Rodriguez received reports of each new case with growing concern. The Galactic Confederation had sent a formal message: control these manifestations or face quarantine. What they didn't share was their true fear, that humanity might fully remember its past as the galaxy's most feared warriors, engineered millennia, ago by the now extinct progenitors, to win a war against entities from another dimension that consumed entire planets. The Earth Alliance established containment protocols, but videos of ordinary people performing extraordinary feats had already leaked to the public. Speculation and fear spread rapidly. On the intrepid, Miller and his team prepared to return with their findings. As they boarded their shuttle, Dr. Bennett looked back at the ancient facility. "We were never the newcomers," she said quietly. "We're the ones who came back." Captain Miller stood before the Earth Alliance Council, his uniform crisp despite the exhaustion evident on his face. The council chamber was filled with military leaders and government officials, all anxious to hear his report on the Proxima Centauri findings. "The evidence is clear," Miller said. "Humans were not always limited to our current physical capabilities. The genetic research facility we found contains proof that our ancestors possessed enhanced strength, speed, healing, and other abilities that were deliberately suppressed." Admiral Rodriguez nodded grimly. "And these awakenings are increasing. Over 200 documented cases in the past week alone." The room erupted in worried conversations until Rodriguez raised his hand for silence. "The Galactic Confederation has issued an ultimatum," he continued. "Control these manifestations, or face quarantine. They've positioned a fleet at the edge of our solar system as a show of force." "They're afraid of us," Miller said. "But from what we've learned, they have reason to be." According to the records Dr. Bennett translated, humans were created as warriors by a species called the progenitors to fight in an ancient war. Dr. Bennett stepped forward, her red hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "The war was against entities called the Void Eaters, beings from another dimension that consumed entire planets. The progenitors created humans as the ultimate soldiers." "So why did they shut us down?" asked Defense Minister Clark. Dr. Davis answered, "The war ended. The Void Eaters were pushed back to their dimension. But then the progenitors faced a new problem: what to do with a species of super soldiers who no longer had an enemy to fight." Miller looked around the room. "Rather than destroy us, they modified our genetics to suppress our abilities and placed us on Earth with limited technology. They essentially hit the reset button on human civilization." A heavy silence fell over the room as the implications sank in. "What about the progenitors?" someone asked. "Where are they now?" "Extinct," Dr. Bennett replied. "According to the records, they died out approximately 30,000 years ago, but they left behind guardians, automated systems designed to monitor humanity and ensure the genetic suppressions remained in place. And those systems are failing," Dr. Davis added, "either by design or decay over time." Admiral Rodriguez stood. "The question now is, how do we respond to the Confederation's ultimatum? If these awakenings continue, and our scientists believe they will, conflict seems inevitable." Miller took a deep breath. "I have a plan, Admiral. It's risky, but it might be our only chance for peace." 3 days later, Miller sat in Dr. Davis's laboratory as she prepared him for a controlled awakening procedure. "You understand the risks?" she asked, preparing an injection. "Once we trigger this, we don't know if we can reverse it." Miller nodded. "If I'm going to represent humanity to the Confederation Council, I need to understand what we're truly capable of. And they need to see that awakened humans can control these abilities." Dr. Bennett watched nervously from across the room. She had spent the past days deciphering more of the Mars hieroglyphs and had made a critical discovery. "I still think you should hear what I found before you do this," she said. "Tell me," Miller replied as Davis prepared the equipment. "The Mars glyphs don't portray humans as mindless berserkers," Bennett explained. "They show them as guardians, created to protect younger species until they could defend themselves. The texts suggest we weren't just warriors. We were protectors." Miller smiled. "That gives me even more reason to go through with this. If that's our true nature, the Confederation needs to know." Davis injected him with a compound designed to trigger the dormant genes while bypassing the built-in suppressors. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Miller gasped as energy surged through his body. His muscles tensed, his senses sharpened, and for a brief moment his eyes glowed with the same inner light they had seen in Martinez. When it was over, Miller felt different, stronger, faster, more aware. But he was still himself, still in control. "How do you feel?" Davis asked, scanning him with her instruments. Like I've been seeing the world through a fog my whole life, Miller said. And now the fog has lifted. 2 weeks later, Miller stood before the Confederation Council on Neutral Territory, an ancient space station older than any known civilization. Representatives from 37 species watched him warily. Humans have begun to remember what we once were, Miller told them. But that doesn't mean we must become what you fear. Elder Ambassador Zexatral of the Zelaxians spoke. Your kind were created as weapons of war. History tells us that when the war gods walked the stars, entire species trembled. We were created for war, Miller acknowledged. But we have evolved beyond our original purpose. The Mars hieroglyphs show that humans served as protectors for younger species, not conquerors. Before the council could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. A faction of Draconites, the same species that had attacked during the first diplomatic meeting, had infiltrated the station with dozens of warriors. Death to the peace talkers, their leader roared. The war gods must never rise again. Chaos erupted as council members fled and security forces engaged the attackers. Miller activated his communicator. Security team, move in, he ordered. Miller and his small team of 5 humans, all having undergone controlled awakenings, moved into action. What followed became legend across 1,000 worlds. Miller moved with impossible speed, disarming 3 Draconite warriors in seconds. Officer Martinez leaped 15 meters straight up to reach attackers on a higher level. Dr. Bennett, who had insisted on joining despite her lack of combat training, found she could sense the location of hidden enemies through walls. Yet what impressed the watching council members most was not the humans' power, but their restraint. Not a single Draconite was killed. Not one civilian was harmed. When the last attacker was subdued, Miller stood in the center of the council chamber, barely breathing hard. We could have killed them all, he said simply. We chose not to. Elder Ambassador Kala of the Artarian Collective, the oldest known species in the Confederation, approached Miller slowly. I was there at the end of the Great Void War, the ancient being said in a voice like rustling leaves. I knew the truth that was hidden from your kind. The room fell silent as Kayla continued. The progenitors didn't exile humanity, Kayla revealed. Your ancestors chose isolation. After the war, they saw how their power frightened other species. They volunteered to seal away their abilities until the galaxy would need protectors again. Miller stared at the ancient ambassador. We chose this? The genetic locks were meant to be temporary, Kayla confirmed. A way for human culture to evolve without being defined solely by war. You were to awaken when needed again. And now we're needed? Miller asked. Kayla gestured to the captured Draconites. The void stirs once more, Captain Miller. The ancient enemy never truly left. And the galaxy will need its guardians again. As Miller processed this revelation, his communicator chirped with an urgent message from Earth. The awakenings had accelerated dramatically. Thousands of humans worldwide were beginning to access abilities dormant for millennia. The time of hiding was over. Humanity was remembering its purpose. 6 months after the revelation at the Confederation Council meeting, Earth had changed in ways few could have imagined. The genetic suppressions had been safely removed from millions of volunteers worldwide, revealing abilities that varied from person to person. Some developed enhanced strength and reflexes. Others found they could heal injuries with remarkable speed, and a rare few discovered they could sense emotions or even manipulate energy. Admiral Miller, recently promoted from captain, stood at the window of his office in the new Guardian Corps headquarters in Geneva. The building had been constructed in just 3 months by awakened humans working together, a testament to their new capabilities. The latest reports from the training centers, Admiral, said Lieutenant Wright, now Captain Wright, as she entered his office. Miller turned from the window. How are the new recruits progressing? Exceptionally well, Wright replied. The abilities seem to manifest based on personality and natural tendencies. Those with protective instincts develop defensive powers, while those with nurturing personalities often show healing abilities. Miller nodded. And what about the more destructive capabilities? The energy manipulation we saw in the ancient records? Wright's expression grew serious. Dr. Davis's research confirms our theory. The most powerful offensive abilities remain locked behind additional genetic barriers. They can only be accessed by individuals who achieve a certain level of psychological balance and ethical maturity. The progenitor's final safeguard, Miller said with a smile. They ensured that only those who could handle the responsibility would access the full extent of human potential. On the other side of the city, Dr. Bennett and Dr. Davis had established an academy to help humans understand their newly awakened heritage. The campus was filled with people of all ages learning to control and harness their abilities. In one training room, Dr. Davis observed as a young woman named Olivia Parker, the same engineer who had discovered the hologram device on Ceres, practiced, healing a small cut on a volunteer's arm. Her hands glowed softly as the wound closed without leaving a scar. "Remarkable progress, Olivia," Davis said. "Your control has improved significantly." Olivia smiled. "It feels natural now, like I've always known how to do this but just forgot for a while." In another part of the academy, Dr. Bennett taught a class about human history, sharing the discoveries from Mars and Proxima Centauri. "The progenitors created us as warriors," she explained to her attentive students. "But we evolved to become guardians. The genetic memory tests we've developed show that many of you carry fragmented memories of this past, which is why the abilities feel familiar once you access them. The integration of these abilities into everyday life had transformed human society. Awakened humans use their enhanced strength and endurance to rebuild infrastructure destroyed in natural disasters. Those with healing abilities revolutionized medicine. People with heightened senses and intellect made breakthroughs in science and technology. Yet not everyone welcomed the change. Some religious groups viewed the awakenings as unnatural or even demonic. Others feared that humanity would become divided between the awakened and those who chose to remain as they were. To address these concerns, the Earth Alliance had established strict laws. No one could be forced to undergo awakening. Awakened abilities could not be used to harm others or for personal gain at others' expense. Those who violated these laws faced severe consequences, including having their abilities suppressed once more. In orbit above Earth, the newly commissioned Guardian Corps flagship Protector prepared for its first official mission. Admiral Miller had personally selected the crew from among the most stable and ethical of the awakened humans. "All systems ready for departure, Admiral," reported Navigator Chen from his console on the bridge. "Thank you, Navigator," Miller replied. "Our mission is straightforward but vital. The centuries-long war between the Vex hegemony and the Spiral Collective has destabilized an entire sector. Millions of innocent lives are caught in the crossfire." The crew listened intently as Miller continued. "The Confederation has asked for our intervention, the first time humanity has been invited to act as peacekeepers since our awakening. We will not disappoint them." The Protector engaged its engines, accelerating away from Earth and then jumping to faster-than-light travel. Inside his quarters, Miller reflected on how much had changed in less than a year. From being newcomers to galactic society, humans had emerged as its most powerful members. Yet they had chosen to use that power not for conquest, but for protection. 3 days later, the Protector emerged in the contested star system. Two massive fleets faced each other, the crystalline ships of the Vex hegemony and the spiral-shaped vessels of their enemies. Both sides detected the human ship and immediately redirected their weapons. They had heard stories of the awakened war gods but had dismissed them as exaggerations. Miller opened a communication channel to both fleets. "This is Admiral John Miller of the Earth Alliance Guardian Corps. We are here at the request of the Galactic Confederation to end this conflict," the Vex commander responded with scorn. "One ship? The Confederation sends one ship to stop a war that has raged for 3 centuries? Leave now, human, or be destroyed." Miller nodded to Captain Wright. "Implement Operation Peacemaker." Wright pressed a series of commands on her console. Throughout the Protector, awakened humans activated their abilities, channeling them through the ship's specialized systems. A wave of energy spread outward, washing over both fleets. Ship after ship reported the same thing. Weapon systems offline, engines functioning at minimal capacity. Neither fleet could fight or flee. "We were created for war," Miller broadcast to the stunned alien commanders. "But we choose to fight for peace. Your weapons have been temporarily disabled. Your representatives will board the neutral station in this system to begin peace negotiations under Confederation supervision." He paused, then added, "If you refuse, we will leave your ships as they are and depart. The choice is yours." Both commanders, faced with the undeniable demonstration of human power, agreed to the talks. Back on Earth, Dr. Bennett and Dr. Davis had made another breakthrough in their research. The genetic locks that kept the most destructive human abilities suppressed were not just safety measures, they were also protection against corruption from the void, the dimension from which the ancient enemy had come. The progenitors were brilliant, Davis told her colleague. They didn't just create warriors, they created beings who could resist the influence of the void while fighting it. Bennett nodded. And they ensured that only those with the strongest ethical foundations could access the full range of abilities. It wasn't just about power, it was about wisdom. On a planet devastated by the Vex Spiral War, Captain Wright led a team of Guardian Corps members with healing and construction abilities. They moved through shattered cities, rescuing survivors and beginning the rebuilding process. As Wright used her enhanced strength to lift a collapsed building section, allowing trapped civilians to escape, a group of local children watched in awe. One small child with blue skin and 4 arms approached her cautiously. "Are you gods?" the child asked in their native language, which Wright's neural implant translated. Wright knelt to meet the child's eyes. "No," she answered with a gentle smile. "We're human. And now, finally, we know what that means." The child looked confused. "What does it mean?" Wright looked at her team members working to save lives and rebuild homes, then back to the child. "It means we protect those who need protection. We help those who need help. And we remember that with great power comes great responsibility." As the sun set on the devastated but now hopeful world, news spread throughout the galaxy. The war gods had returned not as conquerors but as the guardians they were always meant to be.